everyone, and welcome to Keep Indiana Learning's live stream event discussing how we are building teacher capacity across the grade levels, across buildings, and across purposes. So I am so excited here today to be with Rob Westman from Koru Strategy. Welcome, Rob. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
We're really excited about pairing with you and Koru to bring some neat and enticing ways to discuss teaming. Is that right? What are we doing with teams and Koru?
Yeah, this is a really important moment, I think, for a lot of districts and a lot of schools. Because of the disruption of the past couple of years, one of the first things to go has been effective use of collaborative time. We haven't had time to meet together. We haven't had space or even the right people in the room for a couple of years to actually effectively do collaboration. And while many of those challenges are going to continue on, this is a nice moment to be able to reset why we work together and to strengthen that kind of process.
Tell me a little bit about Koru and the work that you all are doing.
Well, a Koru is an evolving fern. It's like a little spiral before it unfolds and develops organically into something big and bright and beautiful. And we love that image of what development looks like for schools. It's an organic process. It really relies on the people that are part of the system versus the structures of the system. And so a Koru is this kind of evolving organic thing. And we feel the same way about teams, about people individually, and the really human element of improvement.
And you have a really interesting background in education. Can you tell us just a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. So I'm a former teacher, high school teacher, English and journalism, a wrestling coach, and all in this kind of context back in Salt Lake City, Utah. I moved into school administration and school level transformation as my first career into administration. From there, went to the Harvard Graduate School of Education to explore what it means to improve school systems at scale. And from there, launched Koru with a colleague and have since done a lot of work in districts and schools all over the nation. And always with this kind of core purpose in mind of how do we make schools, how do we improve schools and school districts to be friendlier places, places where there's high achievement, but also high attention to relationships and people.
I think that's just wonderful. And some of the work that's so fascinating that we have done with you in the past has been around examining some of the data and the work that we are looking through this lens of data inquiry. Can you tell us a little bit about how we could anticipate some of that work being done in our new program?
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple of responses when you hear about data. First is like, okay, it's going to be really like numbers centric and we're going to get really into statistics and like the hard sciences of improvement, which is part of it, certainly. Or there's a fear of like, oh, I've been attacked with data before, or I've felt like there's been celebrations of data. I haven't even known what I've done to influence data. And so when we talk about teaming using data, what we're talking about is how can we be data informed and not data driven? We take in information and evidence as part of our decision-making process to do what's right for people. And we need to acknowledge also some of the tensions and fears about using data effectively. So part of our process is getting teams to work together using information in such a way that builds people's relationships with one another, that does the right things for students, and gives us good information by which we can transform our practice.
I think that's really wonderful. Would this work for teams that are relatively new? We know we have a lot of transition going on in education, a lot of new people coming into the profession. What would that look like for a building that has kind of a brand new staff working together, maybe for the first time?
Well, I think it's ideal for that group. It lays what we do is focus a lot on what we call organizing for collaborative work. It establishes a group's purpose for working together as a team. So we meet twice a month in order to do what exactly? Vent at one another, talk about field trips, or is there a purpose to improving our practice together and doing it in a way that's collaborative? So we learn about one another, and one another's work style preferences, and we establish norms for how we'll work together, a purpose of why we work as a team. And so we norm people in a way that helps us be more effective over the long term. Now, I would say any group of any experience can benefit from revisiting norms and making hidden agreements less hidden and more and more explicit to them.
I think that's really fascinating. And one of the pieces that I think is so interesting in education right now is that there's an assumption that everyone kind of knows what's supposed to be happening in those meetings. And yet it feels like we don't really have the structure or the preparedness to be able to lead those effectively, and to really capitalize on the small amount of time that we have together. Could you go into a little bit about how you help people manage that time, make it more impactful for those on the team?
Absolutely. It's a great question because our biggest pain point is time. Do we have time to meet together? Is that time protected? And how do we use our time effectively? And so, all of these like issues around time are critical. So it might be helpful to describe this kind of workshop series. And if you want to pop up kind of like what a timeline might look like, I'll kind of explain. Now, this may or may not be exactly how this plays out in this particular example, but over the course of the year, we would learn some principles together. How do we organize ourselves, our teams, get the right people on the right teams with the right purposes? And then how do we use and protect time so that that time can be used as effectively as possible for improvement? And this is to help anybody, any team that works together. It's the teacher teams that may meet to coordinate their work on around unit planning or curriculum adoption. It could be a building leadership team that works together to understand how to learn from what's happening within the building in order to make some improvements to building-wide practices. One of the things I love about what we're setting out to do together is that there's going to be a couple of intensive on-sites for about a day of work, getting kind of the foundational elements learned and practiced and organized. And then over the course of some months, you'll be implementing those and saying, okay, well, we're going to put a master schedule together that really works for us to protect our time well. And then we'll report back and coordinate and collaborate in some monthly coaching. We'll do another level of work later on that talks more about data inquiry. How do we get the right data into our conversations so that we can make decisions to change strategically, and not try to do everything all at once? And then there's some more coaching that comes after that. So highly collaborative. We're going to bring people from a number of schools and systems together, and it's just going to be really fun. And I want to kind of show you who is working on this with me. Dr. Jorge Pena, who's out in Chicago, is where he's located. I'm located outside of Boston. He also facilitates this work, and he's a professor out at Loyola Marymount. So the two of us are going to work together and facilitate this work and be co-coaches.
Well, I think that's really fascinating to hear that we are able to take any team at any level and with any experience together and really find those ways to reharmonize or reboot the process that they have to make us all more efficient. What would you say would be the biggest benefit for the makeup of the team that would work with you? Who should come?
That's a great question. And maybe we can look at that. I have a slide actually that has just that information on it that might be helpful. We want district teams who are in charge or have the responsibility to make sure that teaming happens across the district. So if you are working within like a teaching and learning team or a part of an academic cabinet, those individuals would be really helpful. So superintendents or deputy superintendents responsible for academics, data specialists, directors of professional development, principal supervisors would be a really good role to have in the room with that. Perhaps district instructional coaches who might be on the ground working with teams as they're starting to roll out or continuing their work around collaboration. There are also other roles that you might want to slide in and have be a part of that representative group. We do think that ideal team sizes are around, 7 individuals or so. You don't want the teams to be too big at this stage. So we can certainly work with that. 7 is a kind of a rough number. Now, we also would invite school teams who might be over a particular larger school, for example. Let's say you're at a high school and you want to have the principal, assistant principals, and department chairs there. That would be a good group as well to say, we're going to improve teaming across our entire school.
Well, I am very excited to see the work going on across the state as teams sign up for this. I will tell everyone out there watching, keepindianalearning.org. In our conferences and summit session, there's an entire webpage with a lot more information about our rebooting teams work with Koru strategy. And Rob, thank you so much for spending some time to tell us all about this here today.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.